Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to What Happened to You. I hope you're all having a wonderful 2022. It's been a number of months, and it's good to be back. I think the season structure of the podcast was a little bit too rigid, and it made me feel like I needed to have everything totally done and ready to go before putting episodes out. So I'm going to go back to just releasing these episodes as I record them. So it'll be a little bit less frequent, but it will also not be multiple months off between seasons. So you can expect more episodes overall. Before we get into the episode, I have a favor to ask of all of you. Whether you're watching or listening, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review of the podcast, that would be really helpful. And Spotify also just started allowing people to review podcasts. So once you're done reviewing on Apple, if you could head to Spotify and leave a review there, that would be twice as helpful. Apparently, if you don't already listen on Spotify, you have to listen for 30 seconds in order to leave a review. So yeah, if you don't mind tuning in for 30 seconds, that would be great. And also the links to the podcast on Spotify and Apple are in the description of this, wherever you're listening or watching. So click the links, click the 5 stars, and write a review if you'd like. It helps a bunch with the algorithm and allows more people to discover the podcast. So thank you to everyone who's already reviewed and to everyone who is reviewing now. Today's episode is with a good friend of mine, Denis Volk, who has an incredible story to tell, and you guys are going to love him. As always, thank you for your continued support of the podcast.
Here we all are laughing, smiling, making fun of it. And because, as my favorite quote is, laughter is God waking up. I don't know if you've ever heard that one before, but
no.
Yeah, there you go.
But I love it.
Laughter is God waking up. So
That's terrific. We'll just hop right into it, my friend.
Okay.
What happened to you?
Ooh, all right. So I was abused by both of my parents. But before that, when my story began in the lands of Russia, in a place called Koryazma. It's a province of Arkhangelsk. It's like way north Siberia territory. And I lived with my mom and my sister for up to 7 years old. And so I never knew my father. My sister said that we have 2 different fathers, but we share the same mom. And so for me, it was very nice. We were very poor, but I had stuff. I had love from time to time, but of course it was very traumatic. And then eventually, one day my mother stood up to her boyfriend who came in very drunk, and he beat her in front of us. And she was already sick and frail at that point. And I remember doing what I can to just to be there for my mom, to take care of her. After that brutal beating, her health, started to dwindle, and we had a priest come in and do some crazy blessing. I had no idea what that was all about. We were raised Russian Orthodox. And so one of the greatest things my mom ever told me was just to pray to God. She said, pray to God and he will answer all of your wishes and questions, and he will be there for you. And the moment she started to get a lot more sick, I would pray a lot. Like every day, every time I would be walking around, playing around, I'd be praying in my head, please God, heal her. I heard some story that if you find a beer bottle around and you take it by the neck and smash it against the wall, if the neck survives without being shattered, it's a wish. I think I made over 300 wishes of those. I would be searching through bushes looking for beer bottles and, breaking it and wishing it. But of course, because I'm here, God had other plans. And so eventually she got too sick, and my sister and I went to go live with our aunts, and I stayed at our grandmother's farm. It's called dacha. they're called dachas. It's basically government given land that is given freely to people to farm and to live off of. And so usually people transform into like summer homes. And so I stayed there, but I stayed there for a little bit longer than I anticipated. I think it was like 3 months. And I was like, okay, I've been here like way longer. Usually we're here for a week, a month, like something's off. And I hadn't heard anything from my mom. And my aunt's husband at the time, like I was a rowdy kid, I was traumatized from seeing my mother beat, and we were poor and I didn't have a support system. And so I was acting out, and I was not the best, little kid. And I'm saying this with love, I caused some trouble. And my aunt's husband's like, well, these aren't my kids, so I'm not going to be taking care of them. So one day they took me to the orphanage, and I remember just going through the door, like, what are we doing here? I have all my clothes, and what's we're going on a trip or something like that. And yeah. I remember looking around all these kids, like where am I? And my aunt went over to talk to the head lady. And, I remember just like, it slowly started to sink in, like, oh, like this is an orphanage, like this, like, I'm going to be left here. And so I protested. I was crying. I was holding on to my aunt, doing anything I can. And she just dropped me off. And yeah, it was a brutal experience, especially like the first night. All I could do was just cry myself to sleep. And we had a wild Russian roulette nanny where one moment she can be really nice. Other moments she was just like brutal. And I remember all the kids were running around screaming. Some were crying, some were laughing, some were just, kids aren't going to go to sleep at 8 p.m. in the morning, at 8 p.m. at night. Mm-hmm. And I just like, whatever. And I remember she walked by my bed and she just like smacked me on the head with a wooden like broom, like hard thing, I remember it right here in my head, just smacked me. I was like, what is this place? Like I didn't even do anything. I'm not out and about screaming, but.
And was your sister also at the orphanage?
She was there, but because she was 7 years older than I, she was in another location. And so, but that was my welcome party, welcome to the orphanage. You're going to be here for God knows how long. And then here's a smack on the head for you.
Yeah. Tough start.
It was horrible, man. It was terrible. Like living in an orphanage was, it's not fun, for sure. I mean, obviously, because you have no emotional support, you don't really have anyone to lean to. And the friends that you do make, it's there, but at the same time, there's a lot of distance, right? Because the moment you get closer, we're already like, we know like closeness and love and care could be potentially taken away. And so you kind of create like a rebel wolf pack, so to speak. And I made a few friends, and I had a kid over there that was older that hunted me for some unknown reason. He just would always try and pick on me and torment me, maybe because like I wouldn't say I was very frail, but I was very lighthearted, and I had wore my heart on my sleeve. So that's for kids that are more traumatized than I am. That's like, oh, I can take advantage of this,
Right.
And he even got to a point where he almost drowned me in the river. It's like, yeah, dude, yes, man. It's like, and you can't say anything about it, because there's nobody that's like, what happened to you? And no, nobody really cared. It's like everyone is out for themselves. Anyways, the orphanage had a program where they had kids learn Russian folk dance, Russian folk music. We made our own outfits. We made our own ocarinas and wooden spoons. It was beautiful. It was a wonderful outlet for me because I get to be on the spotlight and I get to dance and sing, and that's one of the most important things that any person, human being can go through. And I'll get more into that later, but through this process, we got to perform for our town's paper making workers. We got into the newspaper. It was crazy. It was like I got to become a star, in this little town. And then a month later, they came over to us during our practice and said, okay, we're actually going to be representing, like you guys are going to be representing the orphanage in Moscow, right? There's going to be other kids, other groups of performers that come to Moscow and you're going to perform there, and our orphanage is going to be represented. And so there was tryouts, of course, and I was the first on the list because this is it. Because I had nothing to lose, like my mother wasn't around. I had nobody to lean to. So this was like my anchor to sanity. And eventually we came to Moscow, and then at Moscow, they said, just kidding. We're not going to be performing here. We're going to be performing in America. We're going to be flying again to California, of all places, in San Jose, Saratoga, right? So I was like, wow, dude. So it was the greatest thing ever. We back then they still had like smoke on the airplane. People could smoke in the airplane. They had like really, really shitty food. I remember this like neon colored looking, I don't know what the hell it was, man. It was just like, it was so bad. I remember eating it and I was like, this is great. Oh, look, steak and chicken and pasta and this neon looking dessert thing that eventually we all got food poisoning.
So like Jell-O?
No, dude, it was like cornbread. But neon green cornbread.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
I don't know, man. It was it was terrible. But it was hilarious too, because when we eventually landed, like most of the kids were like throwing up in bags and throwing up on the ground. Like we had no idea how to behave in the outside world. And we're driving in the car. We've never been in a car. We've never been in a plane. But eventually we got to the Russian Orthodox Church that's in Saratoga right now. And over there, they distributed everybody to different families. So there was a school that was hosting this event, and they asked families to volunteer, like, hey, can you house these orphans in your family? And a bunch of people volunteered. Some said, yeah, we can take like 3-4 kids. Some people said we can only take 1, etc. And I remember this day, like the lady that was there, she brought me over, like, hey, see those 2 over there? That the lady and the gentleman over there with their son, they're going to be your mother and father while you're here for the week and a half. They're going to treat you like their own son. So you go ahead and treat them as if they're your mother and father. So to me, this was another opportunity to feel like I'm part of the family again. And of course I ran over there, I embraced them. And it was great. Their son gave me some yo-yo and some other like mini toys. And he was excited because he gets to have a little brother.
Yeah.
And as we're driving to their home, I threw up in their car, naturally. I threw up in the car. Then they're like, oh, no. So they roll down the window and I pull my head over and I'm throwing up like on cars and everything like that. It was grand, and we got to this place, and Sebastian, like, this house was massive. I mean, it was like a mansion. I think it was like six bedroom house with, a backyard of a reservoir, So, I mean, it was just incredible. They had a pool, they had 3 dogs, they had an African gray parrot that I tried to put my finger through, but they were like, no. Cause he would bite your finger. And I was like, wow, like, what is this place? And they had like giant TV. Like, this was before like the new TVs, but they had like an almost amphitheater TV, It was incredible.
It's a stark contrast from the orphanage.
Yeah, dude, like, I've never seen a TV that big before. I've never even, like, I had a dog growing up, but he, eventually got lost. But like, here were 3 dogs, and I could get food at any time. I could sleep in, I could run around, go swimming. It was just incredible paradise. And towards the end of that trip, my stepfather took my hand, and I don't know if it was magic or if he learned Russian, but I remember looking in his eyes and he said, we're going to be adopting you, so like, we want to adopt you and we're going to adopt you. So you're going to eventually come back. And so as the trip came to a close, all the kids were crying and holding on to the people that were holding them, because this is the first, most likely for a lot of these kids, it was the first time they got to interact with adults that were present, that were healthy, that were loving them, that gave them anything they wanted. And so we were all decked out in our new American clothes. I got myself a backpack, a Charizard backpack. It was the coolest thing in the world.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I think I had like a whole tub of toys and candy. And we went back to the summer camp and they said, okay, well, you guys have an option of holding on to all of your toys and your candy, or we're going to take it back and we're going to, keep it safe for you. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take one or two toys. What am I going to do with like 30 toys, So like, yeah. And when I came back to the orphanage after the summer camp, I remember like there was this immense shock. I came into the floor where all like our age kids were there and everyone had my toys, man. All these kids were playing with my Transformers and my Power Rangers. And I was just so pissed off. I like the spoiled little brat, like ran over mine, just taking, just hoarding it like a dragon. And, like the, kids that were younger than me. And I was like, this is my stuff. These people gave it to me. This is my fan. Like, there was my connection to them. And I remember this lady came over, like, can you actually play with all these toys all at once? Maybe you can get rid of, take the ones that you really want and like find in your heart to give some, away. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So, whatever. I just started to I saw like the absurdness of it. And I learned some humbleness in that memory. And so a year and a half went by. It took a little while. Ralph eventually visited us a few times, visited the orphanage, and every time he would come in, he would bring a bunch of toys, right? So he's kind of solidified himself as this like Santa Claus, American Santa Claus, right? And in the eyes of adults and children, he was a savior, an amazing person.
And Ralph is your soon-to-be stepfather.
Yes. Yeah.
Or adoptive father, rather.
Yeah, he was going to be my adopted father. And it was great. And we wrote letters back and forth. And but during that time, my mother had passed away, right? And so it took a little bit longer for them to adopt me. There were complications in the government. And during this time, there was a lot of Russian kids and just a lot of orphans, honestly, from around the world that were getting adopted. It was like this surge of people wanting to adopt kids, and Russian kids in particular. And so there was some leniency. And since I think the year after I got adopted, they became a little bit more strict. But aside the point.
And how did you find out about your mother dying?
Yeah, so my aunt, she just showed up randomly one day, and I was like, oh, just playing outside, and I saw her. I was like, oh, my auntie, came over, like, oh, we're gonna go back to the dacha. You don't have to be here. And so she would do that from time to time, but this time she took me over, and I remember that day very, very vividly. Honestly, I played around, ran around, raced some kids, and there were a lot of people at our at this house. And what is happening? Like, we're having some party, like this is great, there's a bunch of food and I'm playing around. And eventually they took my sister and I back into the room, and they just told her, yeah, your mom passed away last week, so this is, she's going to be buried today. And it was just devastating because I was angry, one, because I felt that I could have handled it if I had known this sooner. I remember like punishing myself mentally, like, why did you get to play around and race all these kids and your mother, there's so like a storm of emotions. And I cried all the way through. And then there was a truck outside, and we went back, and there was my mom's corpse. It was an open casket. And I remember we had to drive very slowly from our dacha to the graveyard. And during that entire time, I was just praying to God that this is not real. She's going to wake up. Any kid is obviously going to do that. And even to the point where they were lowering her, like, no, she's going to jump out of the coffin any moment now. Like, you'll see, my mom's amazing like that. And no, obviously it didn't happen.
It's interesting that that the sort of initial reaction that you felt is something that so many kids feel when it comes to extreme events like this, which is like, this is somehow on me. I could have prevented this, or if I hadn't been sent away, like, this is all of your fault. Like, I would have been able to save her. And, we kind of take on this responsibility as survivors, whether it's going through a death in a family, or, trying to protect the people around us when we're talking about abuse, and not wanting people to feel bad for us, or not wanting them to feel bad in their own
general.
Yeah. It's just interesting that kids even do that. So, like, even before we learn about, like, real responsibilities, we have this sort of innate tendency to maybe blame ourselves for these things. And it's interesting. I don't really know why we do that. Maybe because it allows us to feel like we have some sort of sense of control, or things would have been different if. I don't know.
That resonates really well. In a way, we shut down our innocence and our childlike manner, and we need to kind of grow up to survive the experience. I mean, it's obviously a survivor mechanism. That works. And it continues on through, even to our adulthood, right? Like as you mentioned, when we start talking about our traumas, it's like we either play it cool, or we're trying and make sure that the person is taken care of before we share anything. And it's unnecessary, because we're denying that person's compassion and their own humanity and their ability to witness, the horrific events and kind of process for themselves. So we have to remember that it's okay. Like, how the person is going to handle it is how they're going to handle it. And if they feel uncomfortable, we got to understand, like, they will let us know. Otherwise, at the end of the story, you can discuss more about how one is feeling and all that. But it's the best thing we can do is just to spill it out as raw as possible, because
and it is a survival mechanism for sure, because it also allows us to think that maybe this isn't that big of a deal, and like, hey, like, you don't need to trip too much about this, because I'm not tripping about it too much.
It's like we don't want pity. And oftentimes that can happen, where the person may be going through whatever they're going through, hearing the events, and instead of having compassion, we feel pity. And like, pity has its own place, but it's also unnecessary. And it's like, I don't want to feel like pity is almost like, oh, I no longer am seeing the person in front of me. I'm no longer seeing the soul. I'm seeing my version that I've created of, it's a broken person, or it's a person that's been through trauma. And so I gotta, like, walk on eggshells around them. It's like, no, like, I'm a human being. I got, like, I'm not being traumatized now, right? I'm not in this, like, I will retell a story and I may relive some moments, but I'm not there anymore. It's like, I'm here. So perhaps that's what it is. It's like, I like, because in the moment of the trauma, I was taking on my own internal fire, my own internal strength. I wasn't like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so weak or sad, or no, like, I went through the fire, right? I was walking through it. I was feeling what I was feeling or not feeling, like, I was getting through it, but not one moment did I feel sorry for myself, or I feel less than. Like, what we need in the moment, what people need is compassion. It's like, I'm really sorry to hear that happened. Like, that sounds terrible. And right, that's the most important part. And here we are, right? always coming back. And here we are.
Here we are.
So
this happened.
So my mother died. So she got buried, and then I was by myself, and I was just like waiting for my next saving grace, which was they were going to adopt me. And again, it took a year and a half. It took a really long time. And but eventually the paperwork went through. both Ralph, my stepfather, soon to be stepfather, and Carolyn, my soon to be stepmother, and my brother Sean flew over. They picked me up, and I got to say, "Do svidaniya" to the orphanage and to all of that, and get to have my own meals, my own bed, and all this good stuff. And so that was the thing. Like during the week and a half I stayed in America the first time, I believe that the reason they wanted to adopt me, aside from just how angelic I was, the connection I had, the connection I have with their son, still to this day, I love him immensely, and we talk from time to time. And but we really created this immense bond that I really needed. I never had a brother, had a sister, right? And so so they picked me up and they came over, and there I was. My new life, began. So, and it was great. Of course, like with any adopted kids and with unaware parents, it's like, from the research I've done and the stories I've heard, it's like people that adopt kids, like they expect them to be magically magical, like, oh, they're going to be so grateful to be adopted. They're going to be like angels. Like, no, dude, like I almost died. I was haunted by kids. I saw my mother's corpse, like I went through all this nonsense. I got some trauma that I don't even know how to ward and process. And it's going to leak out and manifest as in smashing doors and lighting things on fire and giving the bird and swearing and being angry and all this stuff. And it's like parents, rather, they're unprepared for that. And I really wish that I think right now at this point in time, there's a lot more awareness around it. But back then, they were just like unprepared for the the shit show storm. They came in the baggage that I brought with myself, and not once.
It's also like no matter how big the TV is, it doesn't make up for the experiences that you've had. It's a crazy thing to assume, but I think that's probably also their own egoic vision for what this adoption would be. Is like they're adopting this kid with no problems, and we're providing you this Disneyland of a house that will magically erase all of your trauma. So it's probably their own sort of projections too, and just like lack of understanding about like what's really going on in your life. I mean, I wonder how much Ralph and the family knew.
None, and that's it. Like, and that's the thing is, though, they never asked me, not once.
Yeah.
They never asked me like, hey, like, what did you go through? Like, what's happened? Like, they were always like, what's going on? What's there? It's always like, you have a child that's creating chaos and just confused about what the hell he's feeling. And all they do is like, what's happening? What's happened? Like I don't believe they did enough work on themselves to really understand the scope of what I was going through. And living in their household, this is probably not come to as a shocker, but the feelings weren't really talked about. There was no like, I'm feeling this, or when you do this, I feel that. Like, there was none of that. It was like, here's some food, here's some TV, here's clothes, here's video games. Like, what more do you need? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like,
they also don't want to know, like you said. I mean, suppression of feelings is generally conducive to a relationship that ended up manifesting.
Yeah, it's like maybe they didn't want to feel that they were a failure. Like they gave everything that they felt that the child needed, everything but presence and love. So, but yeah. So then the story evolved into, like, I think 3-4 months later. Ralph and I were spending a lot of time together. Like, I would be holding his hand, sitting on his lap. He'd be reading me stories. And I remember, like, looking back, like, I spent a lot of time with him, not a lot of time with Carolyn. And she spent a lot of time with her son. And so, I don't know, man. I just felt very safe with him because I never had a father. So, of course, I just gobbled up, and I took the advantage of, like, this is going to be a brand new life, and I can completely begin to forget about my Russian life and forget what had happened and begin to heal. And he invited me to a bedroom one day. So Carolyn went to go shopping or something like that. And he invited me to the bedroom. He locked the door, which I thought was a little bit odd. And then he asked like, oh, Dennis, go ahead and undress. We're going to take a nap. And I was like, well, okay, that's not odd. We used to take naps all the time. Sometimes all four of us, in the same bed is not a problem. Wasn't anything odd.
And you were about 9 now, or?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So my mother passed away when I was 7, around 7, 8, and then a year and a half went by, and 9.5, I was adopted. And then 3-4 months later,
Gotcha.
I was in the bedroom. And so there I was laying, like just with my boxers. And he asked me, like, do you love me? The famous words, like, do you love me? Of course I love you. From an orphan's perspective, from my perspective, like, this is my idol. He's my everything. And he says, I love you too. And, when two people love one another, Dennis, like, this is how they show their sign of love. This is what they do. Right. And like, what do you mean? So then he just reaches into my pants and just starts to, fondle with my private parts. And immediately, shock settled in. And I remember looking out the window and just everything got very quiet, very cold, and looking like my mind invented as if in the Wizard of Oz movie, from everything went from gray to color, everything went from color to gray. And I just remember just laying there like, wow, like this is actually happening. And I remember just screaming like, fuck, like this is horrible. Like I am like stuck here. Like I know this is not supposed to be happening. Mm-hmm. But it's happening. And what am I supposed to do right now? And like, I'm stuck, like I'm here. Like I'd rather like be in Russia right now than anywhere than here. Right. But obviously
that's what we know in the moment. We know it's wrong without any concepts of sex or any of these things. It's like, and it's funny because even phrased in a way of like, this is what people do when they love each other. It's like, it doesn't get past. We still feel it innately. We know that this is wrong. And it's like, wow, interesting that nobody else that I loved showed it this way. What an odd time to be introduced to this kind of love. That is
my mother's not doing that. Even my birth mother didn't do that. Like, all right, what the hell?
Yeah, welcome to America. This is
welcome to the most amazing place you've ever been to. And you have
free.
And you have somebody that's going to be, fondling you the entire time. Oh, geez. So I remember it was just the cold, hard truth of reality really settling in. And in my shocked state, he asked me to, go ahead and do this to me too, And so I really felt like I was powerless in the moment, because like this is an older person. The room was locked. Like where am I going to go? And so I just reached in and, also touched him, and he taught me how to masturbate. And during this time, kids, the body's still growing. So for me, there was no real climax. It was just a shot of electricity. And I remember like feeling, okay, this feels a little odd, feels kind of good. And I don't remember if he finished or not. I blocked it out of my mind. And so then he wanted to just lay there, like, let's cuddle now. I was like, I don't think so. It's like, no, like, okay, well, like, what are you going to do? Like, I think I'm going to go to my room, just get the fuck away from you. And I remember going to the door, and he stopped me before I could open it. And he said, like, just one more thing, don't tell anybody, and don't tell mom, don't tell your brother, Sean. It's like, yeah. Like, what am I going to say? Like, what do you even do? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't even know what the hell was happening. They had no words. What am I going to say?
It's so confusing. We don't have the vocabulary to even describe it, nor would we want to. Like, as if that would be like, hey, mom, guess what? It's an impossible situation to be in as a kid. And like what you said about when you started doing it to him, it's like you are powerless. There is, especially in an environment where it's like, okay, so many things that I didn't have, that you didn't have before in your life, you now have because of this person.
Yeah.
And to think, like, I imagine in that scenario, because I did the same thing. I'm like, think about all the things that I might lose if I
Mhm.
were to say something. And it wasn't like initially, like my initial reaction wasn't like I need to tell somebody either. It was just like, I'm going to pretend like this never happened and I hope it never happens again.
Yes. Yes.
Um, but like as time progresses, you start considering like what the risk reward here, and it's like we're doing this mental scaling in our heads of like, okay, getting fondled, big TV, it's like, and there's an impossible, it's just a ridiculous like equation to try to work out as a 9-year-old, and I just am all too familiar with it. And sometimes I wonder, because my molestation never progressed past the guy basically just holding my dick. He didn't even have the courtesy to make me come. He just
Well,
would hold it.
an asshole.
And yeah, what a douche. But no,
Sorry.
it's like I feel like I imagine that I would have done things.
Hmm.
I don't know, but I know the feeling of powerlessness that is associated with that type of an experience, where it's easy to be like, I wouldn't have done anything to him, but in the moment it's the same feeling. And because I feel like we have so much survivor guilt, especially when we get into like the actual specifics about what happened. And I
Yeah.
remember being so worried that people would be like, why didn't you just say something, or just say no? And it's like, but that's not, I'm risking losing my friend here. I'm risking
Yeah.
this person hurting me. Like, did you ever have any sort of worries about danger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. And I always worried that if I were to say no or stand up for myself, that they were going to disown me. I didn't even have the words for that. Like, I learned later on what that meant, but like that they were going to get rid of me somehow or ship me back to Russia. And so, like you said, it was this like, do I continue this or do I go back to Russia and potentially die?
Talk about a survival mechanism. Yeah. Like it's a no-brainer decision. I'm gonna sit through this and bear it.
Yeah.
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 Wild.
But yeah, he just like he went through like, so that was, that was odd. But then he went through like the most odd thing he said. He just went through the list of all the people and like firefighters, paramedics, policemen, teachers, family, friends. Don't tell anyone.
He listed all those people out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I remember like, so as I was saying, yeah, I won't say it, right? I was making a contract with them that, yeah, I wasn't going to do that. Even though I had no idea what the hell I was even agreeing to. I just wanted to get the fuck out of there as soon as possible. But that stayed with me, right? Because as children, our minds are so palpable, and like, depending on how we're raised, we can either be told like, yeah, every time I say this word, you're going to have to hop around on one leg and bark, like that can be literally programmed into your head. So this agreement was programmed, I believe, to this day into my mind for years. It was like, okay, no matter what happens, I made this agreement, I'm not going to go back on it for a while. Yeah. So I ran away, and then, I pray that like, okay, maybe this was like a one-time thing, some freaky thing that will not happen again. And a month went by, and I was starting to finally feel okay. I was playing with my toys, and he came in the room, and I was like, oh, hey, and then he smiled, and he seemed like the same Ralph to me. He seemed like he had like this father energy about him again. And I was like, okay, whew, yeah, okay, it's not going to happen again. He's not mentioning anything. Then he closes the door. I was like, oh, like, what's happening here? And he's like, so do you remember what we did? And I was like, fuck, dude. Like, I wish I hadn't, but yeah, like, of course I remember what we did. It's like, yeah, okay, good. Well, I really liked it, Dennis. I really liked what we did. You made me feel super good. Did you feel good? I'm like, I mean, I guess. Like, okay, well, let's do it again, huh? How about we do it again? And I was like, fuck, I was trapped in my room, downstairs in my bedroom. The door was locked. Like, where am I going to say no? No. Like, I didn't even know that was even a possibility. Right.
Yeah.
So that night he came over and yeah, we just did it again. And so
He came over like into your room, or
yeah, he came over to the room. So after my brother was put to sleep and it was like late at night, he came down and I would hear his footsteps that would later on become very infamous. I could like tell by the way he would come down the stairs whether he wanted to molest me or whether he just wanted to play the role of a father. I could literally tell.
Wow.
Yeah. Like it was just every time. Sometimes it was like the quicker footsteps or the louder the footsteps, he was playing the role of the father. The quieter, more kind of like sketchy footsteps, it was like, okay, like it's about to happen, you know?
Oh, that's so real, dude. I literally feel like I know exactly what you mean by that, because I would obviously like I would never like sleep well at my friend's house, because it would just be like, well, it's just a matter of time before this happens. And you do. I remember when we would sleep on the third floor, there were these stairs that would go up to it, and it would be a very slow creak and an occasional quiet creak that no human walks upstairs like that unless they're be quiet. So like you do. Wow, what a trip.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, man.
So yeah, this long story short on that end, this continued on, and eventually the abuse escalated from a month to one, every few weeks to every week to every day, right? And so by the time I'm 12 years old, this is literally happened every day for a year, every day. Anytime Carolyn would go out, he would show up, or if Carolyn would tuck me in first, he would tuck me in last, and he would masturbate, and I would masturbate him, and then. So like my whole world started to collide on itself, and I had to find some form of sanity and some way of managing that. And so I created like these different personas, so to speak, right? So I had a persona of like, okay, this is the Dennis that's going to be abused. Like he's strong, he can get through this. It's just another day. It's just another chore. And then you have the Dennis that's going to try and pretend to be a kid. And then you have the rebellious Russian wolf, Dennis that's like going to say, F you, like, I'm going to remember this, to the day, to the very last day. Like, I know what's going to happen. I know this is wrong, and I'm going to find ways to fight back. And eventually I did. I started to lock the door, and when I would hear him, I would run to my door, lock it, and he would try to open it, and I would hear in the other side of the door, like, fuck, like, what the fuck? Why is this locked? And he had like a pin that he would hide that he could open it at any time, And he's like, Dennis, like, why the fuck did you, lock the door? And it's like, I don't know. Like, I was scared of, like, what are you scared of? Like, scared of monsters. I saw a scary movie.
What do you think?
But I, just looking back, I really believe he also had his own split, they have to kind of live their own different lives too, right? Because he would regress. I remember he would definitely regress. The energy and the presence of strength and fatherliness would not be in the room. It was almost as if he would regress to his own childlike state, and he was trying to be like my lover, or my partner in a sense. So did I make it right? No, but it just, I'm saying this because it makes more sense, and it helps to, to create distance from such a traumatic event and to view it in a way that's more healing. Right. And so what I mean by that is I get to see, I first acknowledge that there is a soul somewhere down the line. He was abused, most likely. He comes from an Irish background, back in Boston, and I'm sure he was touched and funded by either a priest or somebody, because he had a real strong aversion to God. God wasn't ever mentioned in our household. It was almost like God doesn't exist. And maybe it was a priest, or maybe it was just the fact that he was abused and he's been through so much shit that he's, we tend to blame God for all of our mishaps and tragedies. But
it's also the insatiability of these desires that Ralph had in this time frame. Like, to think about doing that every day, it seems like in some ways it might transcend the sexual urges to be more about trying to normalize his own experiences.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and obviously sex is different for everyone, but like, it seems like that is beyond the scope of like any sort of like regular amount of interest in sex, where it's like he's getting feelings that might make his inner child feel reasonable. Or hey, I'm not weird now because we're weird together, or maybe weird isn't the right word, but I'm not a victim. I'm not traumatized. This is just what happens.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. And maybe he needed some type of what's the word? Some type of love. Because like, even to this day, like, no matter what would happen, I would continue to be loving. Right. And so maybe he needed that validation that what he was doing was okay, because as a kid, as a child, children just love immensely. Like they can't not love. Even when we're going through trauma, like they'll love a bird or a worm or whatever. And even despite the trauma, there is still a portion of us, at least I'm speaking for myself, there's still a portion that I still love them.
Oh, totally, man.
I love them. And so in the bedroom,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in the bedroom, maybe he was milking that. Okay, we're doing this. I have to be secretive. I'm sure he knew what he was doing was, quote, wrong, but in his head, he was doing something that was out of love and making sense of his own, like I said, making sense of his own trauma.
Totally. I think that's absolutely what was going on. And I remember feeling the same way, where it was like, I loved the guy who molested me for allowing us to play T-rated video games.
Yeah.
I loved that he treated us like that.
Yeah.
I loved that he made us bacon in the morning. And it was like, it's almost like this disassociation between the events that are happening. And maybe it's in part like, hey, this guy's not that bad, right? Like, he could be worse. It's our own sort of like rationalization for what we're going through, maybe.
Yeah, it's wild, man. It's wild, but it's, what I've learned, it makes a lot more sense the more healing we do. Right? The more, I don't know, the healing can come in many ways. It could be through deep meditation, like the 10-day Vipassana. I'm sure that if you sit for 10 days in silence, you will be able to hear your own heart and the truths of reality. And I don't know, I haven't done it yet, so I think you've done that. So I'm sure you can, talk a little bit about that if that has helped you in some way to heal from your traumas. But then you have therapists, you have different plant medicines and different psychedelics, and you have Hakomi. There's a plethora of healing that we can dive into and seek: writing, journaling, painting, making music, dancing. There's so much that when you do enough, if you feel confused or like trying to make sense of what happened, do the work. And I guarantee you're going to uncover these gems and nuggets of wisdom and gold that you can take into your life to create something better, to create a newer version of yourself every day. And that you can wake up proud to be who you are.
Absolutely.
Be in this world, like, just because like these type of abuses, it can rob you of your soul. And I know for a fact that there is a definite soul shattering. In the shamanic world, there's a technique called soul retrieval, that the shamans will do, where they'll go into the lower worlds, where at the moment of, let's say, the first time that you were touched in some way, a piece of your soul had to leave, right? Literally imagine like a your soul is a crystal and a part of that crystal snapped off and went somewhere, right? And maybe that's your ability to enjoy the birds, or maybe that's your ability to write poetry, or maybe that's your voice or ability to even enjoy music and dancing. And for the rest of your life, until that piece of you returns back into your heart, to that wholeness, there will always be something amiss. And you may not understand it, you may not know what it is, but a moment, the day that you reclaim that, right, it will be magnified. It will be 4 times as strong as before. Maybe the poetry will be out of this world and you'll be the next greatest poet, or all of a sudden you start dancing again. And to touch a little bit on dancing, one of the things that survivors can do right now, right, if you've been through this kind of trauma and you don't feel safe in your body, dance. Mm-hmm. Because when we dance, we are literally creating a safety bubble, and we feel safe. That's the only time we dance, really, is when we feel secure in ourselves, right? So even if it's a little tapping, even if it's a little moving like this, dance. Just put on your favorite tune and see how you feel, right? And this is something I learned from one of my men's group. I was part of a men's group healing, and the therapist that was leading, I was like, yeah, that's one of the best ways we can begin to heal ourselves is to dance, because you feel safe, you feel at home this is your home, this body right here. Yeah. And so when we get abused, right, we run away, we disassociate from ourselves. And so dancing kind of brings back the spirit. It creates that fire that,
dude,
yeah,
100%, man. I think a big thing with child abuse in particular is that we are in the same way that you're saying part of your soul breaks off. We're robbed of this sense of innocence where we should have been experiencing joy. And that should have been the main thing that we were experiencing, but we're experiencing in many ways like the polar opposite of that. And maybe not the polar opposite, but a very different negative feelings. And I think that's one of the things that really helped, that was really impactful about the meditation retreat, was that what I noticed more than anything else was a greater appreciation of what is going on, of what is around me, and how amazing it is to be able to just be without any worry of what might happen. And it creates this, you cultivate this appreciation for things that are normally perceived as mundane. Being able to just focus on your breath without worrying about getting molested, in our case, like it allowed, in the same way that you're talking about with dancing, like bringing back these joyous elements of life that are hard to fully appreciate and enjoy when we know what might happen to us later, or what has happened to us. It's hard to fully appreciate a T-rated video game if I know that I'm going to get molested 3 hours from now. And it's almost like I need to really appreciate this James Bond game, because otherwise it's not going to be worth it, man. So
that's so good.
So I feel like that's part of what the meditation does, is that it pulls you back into a moment that you were often trying to escape much more than perhaps the average kid. And bringing back that sense of joy into your life, whether it's through dancing, singing, drawing, or just being, it's cultivating a sense of safety in your environment. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Hey.
So
yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. So
what a lovely side note we just went.
It works. We're walking this path, right? And
yes,
thank you for sharing what has helped you, because it's real. We're not just saying these things for the sake of sounding really nice or really holy or whatever. Like this, we suffered, we cried, we were on the ground in a fetal position. I mean, at least I was from time to time, right? Through all this, because of what we went through. And we took the next steps. And again, here we are.
Here we are.
We are laughing. So always remember that. Yeah. So eventually, as I around 14, I started to fight back. I learned to say no. And
how did you and when did you do that?
I don't necessarily remember. I remember I was feeling really bad one day, and he became really compulsive with his asking, so maybe I stayed up all night playing video games or watching TV, because why not, right? And I needed to make sense, and I needed to feel safe, and that was my safety blanket. For me, how I survived through the trauma, what I created the safety net was through video games and through TV. And so some people have other outlets, but that was mine. And I just remember it was feeling really bad. And I just said, no, you know what? I don't want to do it today. I don't want to do it this morning. I want to sleep in. So he's like, oh, okay. And then at lunch, he came in and was like, what about now? I'm like, no, and so I continued to practice that. I'm like, oh, wait, shit, like this worked. Like he's not gonna touch me. Okay, all right. I can see how far I can take it. And then he began to get really clever. And, I would sometimes say maybe, but maybe was either a yes or a no. But because one maybe was a yes, to him, maybe meant yes. Always, always, and when so the fact that I would say maybe in the morning, maybe we'll do it later today. The fact that I say that to him, it was a yes. And he was just like compulsive about it. It's like, can we do it now? Can we do it now? Like, no, like, what do you mean? No, like, no, like, but you said maybe, you know what I mean? So like years of this craziness. I mean, this went on up until the moment the abuse completely stopped. And but then he started to invent, like, he would hook me in with pornography. He would hook me in with magazines. And eventually, because I started saying no, that stopped working. Right. Then he started to hook me in with food and with getting me new video games and new game consoles. And eventually that stopped working. Because, like, I mean, that wasn't fulfilling me. That wasn't creating me any safety net, because like I'll be playing my Game Boy Advance, my Pokemon Emerald, and he would just interject, like, hey, okay, you've played that long enough, it's time to go do it because you said we're gonna do it. So I was like, okay, I gotta stop like asking for stuff, because that's a way for him to to get into my pants.
Yeah.
And so then
Pokemon Emerald is the best game, by the way.
Yes, it is. I agree. I love Pokemon. Yeah, so he started to, again, he became a little bit more intelligent. And I want to digress a little bit. I just wanted to share this, and maybe this has happened to some kids. When I was younger, when I was still going through the abuse and not being able to say no, I was trying to make sense of what the fuck was happening. And I remember hiding underneath the piano with my dog and masturbating my dog. And I remember like, hey, does this feel good? Like, and I just remember like doing this motion and observing him. And like, is my dog enjoying this? And I remember like, I think I almost broke him at one point. Like after a while, he just kept like humping the air. And I was just remember like, he wouldn't stop humping the air. And I was freaking out like, oh my God, he's going to find out that I was doing something wrong. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? So like, if you've done something to make sense of it, like it's okay. As children, like you did the best you could with what you were given. And, feeling shame for that, it doesn't serve. And if you did that, laugh about it, find something humorous about it, and find, some peace, because it's like, we did what we did. It's all good. There was no TV show or book that's that was telling us, hey, by the way, like this is wrong. I had to find ways like, is this wrong? And the fact that my dog was stuck in a air humping position, like he wouldn't stop humping the air for like 10 minutes, man. I knew that, okay, this is not right. Like this is wrong. So,
well, and it's also probably, it's trying to also make sense of your own, like, okay, this kind of feels good. I don't like who's doing this, but the feeling is good. Is this also good to you? And also, like, it makes total sense to do. This is so interesting. It makes total sense to jerk your dog off. You can't do it with somebody who speaks English because then you risk going back to Russia. But then at the same time, it's like we're trying to make sense of what's going on, and I think it's courageous to be able to share that and be able to dissect it and figure out like what's really going on here is not something that you ever need to associate shame with. Because the way that you were operating at that point in your life, in the environment that you were in, you weren't responsible for it. You're not responsible for the person that you were even in that moment at all. You were manipulated in the most extreme sense of the word into, all of a sudden jerking your dog off is not that big of a deal compared to what most people who get molested do, especially when they get older and have a sense of power and control in these things, And just a side note, I remember hearing about kids in college who would put peanut butter on their dicks and have dogs lick it off. So
Jeez.
all the more reason to think this is not that big of a deal. But yeah, man, that's really interesting. I have not heard of an experience like that before, and I think that it's probably because of, like, in a lot of people's heads, the idea of animal association is this. I can see that having a bunch of shame associated with it, but that's sort of what I mean, where it's like your actions are not justifiable in the way that they are when you're an adult. And obviously we bring a lot of this baggage and trauma and unhealed emotions to us when we become adults, as we've discussed with the people who have molested us. But particularly in these moments where we're kids and we're just trying to make sense of our world, it's okay. So thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah, so Ralph got more creative, and he invented a story where he told me that he knew a lady, a real life person that was living in Los Gatos. And this lady, he's known her for years. And what her specialty was having sex with underage boys to help them grow up into men. Right?
Oh, what a profession.
Yeah,
where'd you go to school for that, lady?
Yes. So, to say my interest was piqued, because then this could be a possibility for me, right? I've already seen all the pornography, and like it's all in my head, and that now I can transition it into some reality. And so I got more curious about that, and my curiosity, I evened it out. Like, okay, like to get closer to that becoming a reality, I have to, masturbate with him more often. So I did, like it just for me, like I was like, okay, I'm doing the chore, la la la. Okay, tell me more. And so he would create these stories, and he would ask me what we would do together, what I would do to her, and he would describe her in detail and whatever, right? And I didn't know any better. I think it was, maybe he knew this person, maybe it was just some made up fantasy. I don't know. I have no idea. But eventually one day he asked me, like, well, what do you think about mom? And I just like, what do you mean? Like, what? Like, I think she's great. She's awesome. I like her cooking, and she's really nice. And blah, blah, blah. Like, no. Like, what do you find her attractive? Do you find her, cute in any way? And I was like, man, we're masturbating. Like, I don't want to be thinking about my mom right now. So I was like, no, dude. And he's like, okay, never mind. Let's talk more about this lady. But then, like, every time we would masturbate, he would come in and he would interject. He would plant the seed of, mom, what about mom? What about mom? What about mom? And I got really irritated and annoyed with that, because it just, like, the abuse like evolved to the point where like now I have to put up another guard of not thinking about my mom, right?
While
Aside
also
from
being conditioned to think about her in that way.
yeah. So I remember I gave in one day and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, she's pretty cute, she's pretty beautiful. And so then he's like, I got him now. So then we took the lady out of the picture and put mom in the picture. And so everything we're fantasizing about of the woman, we started fantasizing about Carolyn. Right. And so, and this went on for, I think, over a year, this grooming process. And he would come in the night and he would tell me that, hey, I told her what we did, what we've been talking about. And she's excited. She got excited, And so now he's planting the seed that, okay, that she wants this too. Right. And so eventually he's like, do you want this to happen? Right. And I've already come this far. So I'm like, yeah, okay. All right. Might as well. Right. Like, well, my life couldn't get any more worse. Like this is happening. So let's just see what the next chapter in the story is. And, so he talked to her about it. Then he talked to me. He said, okay, I want to get her excited. So I need to take a picture of your erect penis to show it to her so she can like see what you look like.
Sure.
Odd choice of words, but
yeah.
I remember just doing that and laying on the bathroom floor where a lot of the abuse happened. And he took a picture. Then he's like, great, this is awesome. And he's going to go show it to her. And before he left, he's like, she's worried, right? So she's worried that if we do this, that the whole family dynamic is going to change. Like, you know what I mean? Like we
now it's too crazy.
Yeah, now it's so it's just like I've gone over days and hours thinking about like, did she know this was happening? I'm sure she knew, because like, how can you not know? As a mother, how can you not know? And I don't know, maybe her greed and when having the lavish lifestyle, the Rolls Royce, the supercars, and the Hawaii trips, the cruises and all, like she wanted all that. And so, in her defense, whatever that may be, like maybe she thought that by doing this, she's going to protect her son. It doesn't excuse what she did, but again, like it's important to keep them in the conversation, in the loop, because they're not just demons, they're human beings, right? Yeah. So I reassured him, like, no, Dad, don't worry. I'm going to make sure that the dynamic isn't going to get any weirder, than it is. Like I took that on, and it was set for Friday. And I remember we had like some dinner party, the people left, and it was like 12 in the morning, and we're laying in bed and I'm anxious as heck and he's freaking out and she's stalling as long as possible. This is not to, put her in a good light or whatever, but she was, I'm sure she knew like, okay, what she's about to do is really fucked up. Maybe, who knows? But eventually, like, he would go in and out of the bedroom, go downstairs to the TV room, like 3-4 times, and like, where the fuck is she? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, just stuck in the bed, like, in a bean position. Yeah. Eventually she came upstairs, entered the room, heard her take a shower. And, I'm hiding underneath the covers at this point. And then eventually I'm hearing the footsteps and I peek and whoa, there's her naked body. And I'm freaking out. Heart is racing. I feel her come in the bed. And then they like rip the sheets off, just violently rip the sheets off. And there I am in my nakedness. There we all in her nakedness. And then she just begins to masturbate me. And it feels a whole lot better because I don't know what's wrong with Ralph, but like, it's like he didn't have a penis of his own or something. You know what I mean? It's like, for what he did was like, it's just like, I don't even know. It was a chore, but with her, it was obviously a lot better. And I say this not because, again, not to excuse, but putting you into the moment of what was actually happening for me. and the work that I've done to separate myself, I can calmly talk about it. Before I wouldn't even talk about the abuse with my Carolyn, with Carolyn. I would never talk to people about it in such a calm manner. But yeah, so eventually, she lay down, and I started having sex with my mom. And I remember very vividly to this day that in my head, I'm like, okay, this is it. Now I'm a grown man. I can't go back. Like this is going to be my life. And being shocked and, scared out of my mind, we ended up like having sex for like 2 hours or something like that, because I just couldn't come. And I'm not boasting like, oh, I lasted very long. I'm like, no, it's just like through shock and all that, it was just very difficult. But yeah, eventually there was a climax, and then they wanted to sleep together. So I slept with them that night. So in the morning we wake up and we have sex all over again. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and Sebastian, things changed really well. She started cooking more. She started talking with me more. She started being there for me more. Like before that, she was very cold with me. She was very absent. She would, tuck me in and say, I love yous and all that. But like, I couldn't feel her. And after this event, like I felt that I had both of my parents in my life, like this was the thinking I had in my head. Right. And so now that the secret is out, we don't have to hide. Ralph and I don't have to hide anymore. And like, maybe that will pause because we did all this, but no.
Well, that's also pretty freeing too, just to have like somebody else know.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
I remember.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of it. I told one of my friends, this is like, I just told him about the wiggle game. It was like the very beginning stages of the molestation. I was still embarrassed about him knowing that like it was going on for a lot longer and stuff. But I told him, and just that alone was an incredible release, just to not feel like this secret is only yours to bear. And it is interesting thinking about how big of a deal they made about the dynamic changing negatively, and how it actually seemed to change positively. And I wonder if that was intentional on their part, or if because I don't know. But also, I totally had 100%. I remember thinking to myself, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I remember thinking like, okay, if molestation is going to be going on, maybe I could work something out with the dad where maybe I could like touch the mom's boobs. And that was because that was like all I wanted to do. And it's funny because I imagine that if he had gotten to the point where we were like having sex or like having communication about these kind of things, that would have been the extent of my sexual knowledge. And so I would want to do that with his wife. But at the time, because all he was doing was holding my dick, that was as far as my sexual knowledge went. And so all I wanted to do was just touch her boob. I didn't even have any concept of like having sex with her or anything. But in my head, she was, way hotter than a dude that I didn't want to have this happen with. So it's like I guess you could call them standards, but like the standards are pretty low for the sexual experiences that we've been having up until this point. So all of a sudden, it's like it's pretty reasonable, I think, to be excited about it in the sense that like compared to what has been going on, this has been happening for 5 years with somebody that. To be able to do it with somebody that you're actually like sexually attracted to I wanted to ask you at this point, are you attracted to men or women or both, or
Sure.
where was your head at sort of like going into this experience with your mom?
Yeah, great question. I remember prior to having sex with my mom, Ralph tried to implement that I was bi. Right. He said, oh, we're all bi, Dennis. We're all like boys and men. We're all bi like that. And I remember like talking with them like, no, I'm pretty sure I like girls. Like ever since even before all this happened, like I was fantasizing about, some fantasy girl that I was going to meet and whatever, even in Russia. So like I knew my sexual orientation. However, the abuse with him definitely shadowed that. Growing up, I definitely had I felt confused because I loved men, right? I had a deep appreciation for him, but I wasn't in a sexual manner. I never fantasized about trying to have sex with men or masturbating somebody. I remember he also tried to switch the pornography at one point. That he showed me only gay pornography, like a gay orgy of these they seem like underage boys, but they were all like having sex with one another. And he implemented that into our play session. And I remember just like having a really hard time masturbating to it. And he's like, "Oh, this is exciting you." I'm like, "No, not really." Like, come on, what do you mean? No, look, like he would just try and
Mm-hmm.
maybe make like, if I was okay with it, then he was okay with it. I mean, think I think he was actually like a gay person because
Yeah.
he was very flamboyant, right? He was very flamboyant, and he would often flirt with boys and men, especially when we have people over, like later on, like he would pick and talk with boys all the time. And so it was really strange. So, and I think he just said that he was bi to, maybe he just didn't accept himself. But
Yeah.
yeah, it took me a while to separate myself from the trauma, right? So I would have like moments of panic where I think for like 2 years, I had done like a very powerful psychedelic experience that kind of messed me up, where I would hear words, and anything that sounded like gay, like I would like cringe inside, and I couldn't understand what the heck that was all about, because maybe I was afraid that if I was gay, then I was okay with what happened.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah, I allowed that to
Yeah.
happen. And if and I will say this, that if you are uh, is homosexual the proper term?
Homosexual is gay. Yeah.
Yeah, if you are homosexual and you've gone through this type of abuse and trauma, like it's still not okay. I've known somebody who has been through that, and um, they are a homosexual, and they share with me that for a long time they loved men and they were interested in men, but then this abuse was happening, and they couldn't make sense of what the hell was going on. Where there was something fucked up with them, were they allowing this to happen? No, like the abuse is separate as outside of your sexual orientation. Who you want to be in love with, who you want to have sex with, who you want to date, it's completely up to you. And it should be like, that is your holy contract with yourself and with God or with spirit or whatever, however you want to view it. So the fact that if you are gay and this happened to you, focus on that, and not because you were gay or the person was gay too. Like, just like it's murky waters. So yeah, I'm engaged to a beautiful woman, and I've always loved women. So, but again, this trauma played a really big role in my life where I was confused for a while. And
Oh, it's just ruthlessly confusing. Totally, man. That's sort of what I mean about like the jump of going from the men who molested us to considering what it would be like to either, in my case, make a deal, or have, in your case, your adoptive mom get involved. It's like that is so much more appealing than what's already been going on. And it's like all of a sudden it's like, this isn't that bad, And it's all relative. And if we can sort of go back into these experiences and recognize what was really going on in our heads and forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, you can't really blame yourself for any way that you operated at that time, because we were doing the best given the circumstances.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because our stories are different but quite similar in terms of the thoughts and emotions and confusion.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So what happened? So what happened after that morning?
I got bacon. It's
Sounds
very
about
good.
right. Too familiar.
Yeah, I just things just got a little bit more relaxed. They allowed me to play more video games. They gave me more food. They were more touchy feely with me. They were communicating with me, and I felt like I was, in the club. I was part of this. Yes, now I don't have to worry that I'm gonna be discarded or sent away. Like I'm in. Like this is it. And and it was good. Like I didn't get yelled at a lot. Like prior to that, I would get verbally abused from both of them, and after that, they stopped. It was great. But then, like a few months later, it continued. It's like that died down. The the new fancy toy was no longer fancy, and so it was just like, okay, this is happening for my own pleasure, and this is my own internal process. And there's still a kid who's not doing homework, who's playing too many video games, who's saying no to us, who is being rebellious. So we need to, put the whip down. And I remember just feeling really defeated. I was around 16 years old at this point. So the abuse with Carolyn and Ralph has been going on for over a year. Mm-hmm. And they started to verbally abuse me again, and things just kind of spiraled out. And I just remember feeling like, what, like I've done everything you guys have asked me to do. Like what gives? Like what the fuck is happening here? Like I can't win in this situation. And so I felt super depressed. And I remember walking outside of the home, and we have a bridge. And I remember sitting on the bridge and just contemplating suicide, contemplating to kill myself, because it's like back there, I have to please Ralph. I have to please Carolyn. And then outside of that, I have to do chores, and I have to be abused verbally and, put on a facade that nothing is happening while taking, a slap to the face or a whip by the belt, and pretend as if I deserve that because I've been a misbehaving son, not because I said no to Ralph or not, what I mean? So it was so confusing. And I made a commitment that, yeah, I'm going to kill myself. But at the same time, I really didn't want to. And I was praying to God that, please, have somebody pull over and stop this, because I know that I'm going to jump regardless. If somebody doesn't come soon, I'm going to jump. And so I gave myself okay, I'm going to give the next few cars. If nobody stops, I'm going to go. And 10 cars went by, and I was starting to feel panicky and relieved and freaked out all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then some random lady stopped and said, "Hey, are you all right?" And I was like, "No, this is, my imagination," and blah, blah, blah. And she just wouldn't leave. She's like, "Hey, are you all right?" It just kept asking. And eventually I "Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, lady." To this day, I'm grateful to whoever that was. I was an angel in disguise, because really, I can say it with confidence that I would have killed myself. But so I walked back in, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I just got to continue on and keep trucking along. And I told them I almost killed myself. They were really angry at me. Why would you want to kill yourself? And perhaps if I did kill myself, then, the police were going to investigate and all that. So
and it would ruin the family dynamic. So
ruin their whole facade. And so for the next 3 years, I just became numb to it. I just I'll go to school, I'll do my best, and I'll continue having sex with both of them, and just I'll try and fight back, say no, and blah, blah, blah. I eventually, somewhere between 16 and 19, I had a girlfriend who I believe saved my life, because she actually showed me some actual genuine love, and I got to experience what it was like to fall in love, for the first, your high school sweetheart, right? You have that first love that elevates you to new levels of your understanding of love and crushes you all at the same time, because you know, like there are some really lucky ones who are still together and married, but usually the story is you get to that place, but then the baggage comes in and then you crash and burn and all that. But yeah, around 19 years old, I was going to massage school. I barely graduated, and I was very insecure. I had a very insecure kind of love with her because she went to Chico State. It's like near Sacramento. And I was worried about like, she's going to get roofied or she's going to get alcohol. And, you know, I was very straight edge. I didn't drink, no, nothing. Mm-hmm. And so I was projecting onto her that she was going to be unfaithful to me and like the love that we created. So I got vicious, and she's like, we're done. That's it. I'm cutting it off. And she broke up with me. And then I lost my job because I just didn't show up on time. And the lady's like, okay, I got to let you go. Like, this is like the 5th time you haven't showed up on time. And then I had my car towed, and it was like the perfect trio, you know? And so I was like, okay, I gave it my go. I tried to, you know, I said, I'll give it my best after the first bridge incident. And now here I am at 19. I did it. I gave it 3 years. I gave him my shot. And so I was writing a goodbye letter, and I was like, how am I going to do it? I definitely can't jump off the bridge because, you know, the lady might show up again and save me. So I got to figure out another way. Maybe I'll drive off some cliff or something. And I was texting my friend, and he was in Boston at the time, and he knew what I was going through. I told him a little bit about it, and he called the cops on me. I was sent to a mental hospital and stayed there for a week. And of course, Ralph and Carolyn freaked out because the cops came in like, what the fuck's happening? You know, but not once did I tell anybody that I've been abused. Mm-hmm. You know, again, because the moment, ever since that first day of I'm not going to tell anybody, it continued to play its role. Yeah. Right. I really felt like I couldn't say anything because I made that commitment to my savior. And if I were to say it, then everything is going to, you know, all hell is going to break loose. So eventually, like 3 weeks went by, I was transferred to a different hospital, and then eventually got out of it. And the first thing that Ralph asks me is like, can we do it again? You know, it's like, he couldn't comprehend that what I was exhibiting, all the stress and the anger and the craziness. Now wants to like, maybe it's the fact that I verbally abuse them and I sexually abuse them. No, like whatever. Yeah. So
crazy.
But I had I met a really good person named Patrick, and he and his girlfriend housed me for like a day or something. Like I would sleep over at their house, and I would eat vegan curry and watch conspiracy theories and learn about crystals and tarot cards and the spirit. So like, it was like my red pill, you know, they offered me the red pill and I took it, and my world started to dissolve, like the Maya, the illusion of it all. And I built up the courage to tell Patrick what I had been through, because Ralph approached me and said, what do you think of Patrick? You know, I'm going to ask, you know, like I really felt I needed to protect him from Ralph's weird, freaky advances. And so I was like, what's the best way I can protect him is I can tell him exactly what kind of these people are and what I've been through. And so I went over, and it took me like 10 minutes to eventually get the first words out. I remember sitting in his house, and he was getting ready to work, and he's like, what's up, Denny, what's going on? And it took me 10 minutes to say, I've been abused by Ralph's been sexually abusing me. You know, it was like just 10 years of abuse, 10 minutes. I don't know, coincidence. I don't know. But I remember just feeling this immense relief, like, ooh, I can breathe again. The floodgates were, you know, coming through. And he knew something was weirdly weird, because he just understood. And he said, what do you want to do? Do you want to call the cops? Do you want to go to court? I eventually called the cops, and on the phone line, the operator lady asked me, like, you know, how old are you? Like, I'm sorry this is happening. Because I told him, like, yeah, I've been sexually abused by my adopted father. I didn't mention my mom. at all. But again, didn't really matter. And she's like, well, how old are you now? I said, I'm 19. And she's like, well, because you're, over the legal age limit of 18, we can't legally do anything for you. So here's some suicide hotlines. Here's some other hotlines. Like, good luck,
Oh, it's just shocking.
Yeah. It's irritating. It's irritating to hear this. I hear it from other survivors who, when they told their parents or they told their guardians that they felt it was a guardian, they're like, are you sure? Are you sure this happened? Like, I don't think this is real, or we can't do anything about it. Like the movie Spotlight, for example, right? It's a perfect example of like this. It's fucked up. And unfortunately, it's also the reality we live in. And the work that we continue to do, this is going to change, right? Because the more people speak out about this, I don't know who the hell they are, but the people that choose to put a blind eye to this or choose to ignore it, like maybe you can do that for 1,000 cases, but 10,000, 30,000 cases, it's like, this is our story, right? This is your individual story, but this is our story. Somehow, somewhere, I chose to incarnate into this body, and I'm saying this because this is how I've made my peace, but I chose to go through this to put an end to it, to put a stop to this generational trauma that would have continued on. Like this is my call. And I stand by it to this day. I took these people to court. I won in court. They were, charged. They're in prison right now. I'm not going to go into that because it's a longer story, but I chose to forgive. My journey to healing began through forgiveness. Like the moment I actually felt relief and love for these people, despite going through that, like the forgiveness is key. And it's not like, oh, I forgive you, so therefore it's okay. It's not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you. It's like, I forgive them because now they have no power over me. Literally, they have no power over me. Like I can relive some of these memories and I can experience heart rate and all that, but that's not them. They're not doing that. That part is done. This is just my healing. Forgiveness is so crucial because it gives you power over the perpetrator.
It's funny what you mentioned there just about heart rate and how you can go through all of this healing and still have these experiences where you have your heart rate go up for whatever reason. I was just home for the holidays, and I was driving to the soccer field to play some frisbee, actually, but it was a big soccer field. And to get there, you drive right by the house of the guy who molested me. And that doesn't ever cause me any issues. Like I can totally go, I drive there often when I'm home, and it's not a problem. But when I was driving by this time, somebody was pulling out of the driveway right as I drove by, and my heart. I mean, it's like I couldn't believe. It's like from a normal beat to like I'm ready to run faster than I have ever, just in a second.
Wow.
And it wasn't even because I didn't recognize the car. It was the guy who molested me. I think it was his daughter, but I knew that it wasn't him. But before I was able to decipher that, I was just like, oh my God, what are the odds? This is crazy timing. But it was funny even though I know that I don't believe that I harbor any ill will to this person anymore, it's still, you can still react that way. But I think what was really nice about that is that I continued driving and like just got to feel that heart rate eventually like slow down, and just to kind of remember that like, in some ways our body betrays us in the same way that it betrayed us when we would get erections in these situations that we didn't really want them. We didn't want to convey the wrong message here. But your body will respond because that's what it's supposed to do. Somebody's touching your penis. That's enough of a reason for your body to get hard. Forget who's doing it, Yeah. And in the same way, it's like our body harbors all, my body was harboring all of this these past feelings of when I would see him around, and the fear of seeing him at soccer games and how nervous I would get and all of these things. And it comes back up despite healing. But I think the difference is your perspective on that feeling. And what I felt was like, hey, this is an opportunity to once again remind myself that I'm safe, and to know that despite feeling fight or flighty in this moment, I'm okay, and not to be afraid of those feelings, and just to treat them as opportunities to continue letting go of anything that you still hold on to. So I totally resonate with what you said there. And yeah, it's just wild, man. I do want to ask you just briefly about the legal experience, if possible, like, because it's so insane that operator said, hey, you had your chance, 18 years, should have taken it while you had, it's like, it's a bananas thing to think that's how the law works. What was the process like for you speaking up, and just maybe an overview of the legal process? Because I know, I went through that too, and I would be curious to hear what the similarities and differences were.
Sure. Well, prior to that happening, and after I had my forgiveness healing session, I had wrote a letter to that I was gonna share this about how healing is possible, and how we can return to wholeness, we can return to God, we can return to a state of grace despite the darkness that we experience. And oftentimes we get there through not really knowing the steps of the journey. It just happens. Eventually, once you begin the healing journey, you will see magic, but you have to do the footsteps, but you also have to, like, it's like in the Bible where Jesus asks John, was it John? Anyway, where he asked one of his, in the Bible where Jesus says, like, walk on water, come to me, like, have faith. And that's kind of how we have to go about our healing journey. You have to have faith that what you gotta hold on to, that what you're doing by looking at your shadow, by choosing to heal, you are literally walking through faith, right? Because you have no idea what it's going to be at the end of the road. But take it from me that it's always going to be good. It's going to look messy at times, and the end result is going to be amazing. So I had written this letter, and I sent it out to a private Facebook group first, and it was met with such a positive response. There were people who'd gone through their abuse and never shared it with anyone, and they eventually shared it with more people because they had read this. Like, you can literally play a role in your life. Like, who knows how many friends you have who've gone through the same abuse, even if it was one time or many times. Just hearing that makes it possible for other people to walk this path. And then I shared it with a school teacher, I shared it with the school principal, and then I shared it with this wonderful grandma. Her name was Yuna, and she couldn't keep it to herself. Naturally, the truth just cannot be contained like that. So she shared it with her daughters, who we were all in the circle of friends. And then all of a sudden, people started to distance themselves from Ralph and Carolyn. They're like, Dennis, what the fuck's going on? They said, like, you wrote some letter and people were saying we abused you. Like, why would you say that? Like, well, because you did. Like, yeah, but that's aside the point. Like, why would you tell anybody? I'm like, well, I mean, I didn't really. Like, I mean, I said it, but it's like, I asked people to whatever. I tried to protect them in the moment. And but eventually, the teacher and the principal that had told Lisa Frazier and Claire Vickers, who were at Fisher Middle School, they went to a teacher conference, and on the slideshow it said, if a kid comes to you revealing that they've been abused and they're under the age of 25, not 18, 25, by law you have to report it, right? And so they called the sheriff. And then this snowball reaction. I had no idea this was happening. And eventually I got called by a detective. They said, "Hey, my name is Detective Hanks. Do you know why I'm calling you?" And I'm like, I have an idea, but no. And so they asked me to come in. And I went in, I revealed my story, and they asked for more details. It's terrifying, no matter how much healing I had done, going into details about what he did to me, what I did to them, etc., was terrifying and a scary experience. But at the same time, it was necessary. The case continued to grow. And when I went to court, my story went internationally, right? So I put myself out there. My lawyer at the time, she asked me, like, do you want us to hide your face and your voice, or do you not want to? I went to do a meditation retreat. I got a message from God saying, for them to see the light, they need to be stripped completely naked of everything they own, so they cannot hide behind it all. Like, okay. So I went up on the news and being interviewed, like, yeah, basically, so they would see me like, hey, I'm the one that revealed the truth about what you guys did to me. I was very proud of that, because it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm so good, but it was like, this is truth, and truth is God. And like, I am following this righteous path of doing the right thing. I don't know where it's taken me, but I know it deep in my bones is the most right thing I've done, all my life. And yeah, the whole legal thing was horrible. I will say it was it took like over 4 years to complete.
Wow.
Because she had money and I did not. By grace, the lawyer that helped me did it pro bono. I'm not saying that a lot of lawyers will do that, but she felt like, so, like every little thing was happening, so I would continue on this path. I could have said no at any point, but I just I couldn't forsake my own heart. I couldn't forsake my own truth. I had to continue on despite the shame and embarrassment that I was feeling, and all my friends would find out and people would find out. Fuck it, whatever. Like, this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And 4 years went by. She kept like paying off her lawyer to, we found some new evidence, and they prolonged it. But eventually I said my victim speech survivor speech. Yeah. And they were handcuffed. She was handcuffed in court. I got to witness that. It was cathartic. It was amazing and sad at the same time, because it's like you do this, and there's a part of you that you have to eventually face. I mean, if it was a family member like that, it's like reliving a death of a family member, and I had to relive a moment of losing my mother again,
Wow.
So and losing a father, losing the idea of what is family. And I lost that mansion. I lost a lot. I gave up a lot. I didn't lose it. Like, I gave it up. I gave it up for truth. I gave it up for goodness. And in return, right, I got to see them go to prison. I got to win this victory. I got to reconnect with my sister that I lost contact from 12 years old, because the story went internationally and she got to see the story on TV. Right. And it's so like, I have my sister in my life because of this.
That's incredible.
Yes. Right. I would have never known. I literally, up until the point that the Russian news reached out to me and say, hey, we found your sister, I thought she was dead. So this is, little steps in my story, like, hear it, like, there is real magic. There is real grace that plays in our life if we choose to follow our truth, and we choose to speak out, and we learn to forgive for ourselves, so we can begin the healing. Because like, if you still hate the person, the perpetrator, and you're still angry, like, healing will come a lot slower, and it may not even come at all, because you will just be stuck in this story of, they did this to me, they did that, and I hate them for it, and I'm gonna, eat 5 tubs of ice cream and stay up for 48 hours because they did this to me. This is no. Learn to forgive, understand what forgiveness is and reclaim your life, because it's a choice. At the end of the day, it's a choice to reclaim your life, and it's not easy, it's messy, and it's worth it. I'm engaged now because of this journey, right? I have a dog, I have cats, I have a bunch of plants, I have amazing friends, right? We met because I said, if I would have never gone through this, we would have never met. We would have never had this beautiful conversation. And I wouldn't have been able to add this beautiful, story. So if it's scary, reach out to people, reach out to your friends, join a support group. That really helps. So, but anyway, I digress a little bit. I get a little passionate about it because it's like I really want to share this truth.
I feel it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. So it was the legal thing. It was hard. So if you're thinking about going the legal court and to the court, just be prepared. It's another battle. On top of what we go through, and on top of the anxiety and the depression and the moments of like wanting to feel suicidal, like on top of all that, you have to go through to people who are never going to admit that what they did to you was wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe magically, maybe if we can reinvent how we view them, how we view these people who have done these horrible, atrocious acts as human beings who did their best. Like literally, like it's sad. We can kind of pity them, and we can also say, wow, they really did their best. Sometimes on my best day, I barely wake. Like in the past, my best was I barely woke up and I watched YouTube all day. Mm-hmm. Despite me, going through all that, like that was my best, and that's okay. Like we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to, to get through it. And again, back to forgiveness. Forgiveness allows you to see them instead of seeing your story, instead of seeing a demon, or even if they did what was demonic, it gives you that power to like, I see you. You can't hide from me anymore. There's nothing that you can do to me at this point, because they're like, I've done, like I've forgiven you. Like, what can you do? Mm-hmm. Right. How powerful can that be?
It's the best. It's the most freeing feeling. And it's like you're changing your own narrative, like the way that you viewed your life experiences and who you are in many ways up until the point where you begin forgiving. And not just the people that wronged you, but yourself for how you behaved and for not speaking up sooner, or whatever the things are that you blame yourself for. Like you can begin releasing all of that and processing the emotions and knowing that, like, it's like what you said, you're sort of just guided by truth. Like we have these, in the same way that we know that it's wrong when it starts and throughout, though it might become more normalized in our heads as a survival mechanism, that feeling, that innate feeling of knowing right from wrong doesn't go away. And in fact, we can bring it back just by being willing to accept ourselves and accept the people that wronged us, and just like know that it was purposeful and significant. And you don't have to be tied to these experiences in the way that you've always thought you would be. You can at any point in your life rewrite your entire story, or maybe not rewrite it, but review it differently. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't really consider, is what will come from forgiveness. And it's I think we have a tendency to get stuck in this sort of victim mindset of like, poor me. But this thing that causes you to think that way is also your way out of that thinking.
Yes. Nice.
And it is a choice. It's entirely up to you. Nobody will do it for you. There are ways that people can help you with it, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. And wouldn't have it any other way, by the way. It's like, what an opportunity we have to transform these crazy experiences into positives. And just in the way that you were putting out that note and how many people were benefiting from it. And it's like, it's just we're trying our best, and that's enough.
Yeah, and we're constantly evolving. Sebastian, I want to ask a question. I don't know if you mentioned it, but like, have you forgiven your perpetrator?
Yeah.
How is that? How was that?
Well, I think it was more of like a releasing of emotions rather than a conscious "I forgive you."
Mhm.
I think it was more allowing myself to process the negative emotions that I had towards him that sort of brought me to a state of neutrality. Because it's not like, hey, I don't want to say that I'm not like how do I phrase this? It's not that I'm stoked for him now, but I don't feel ill will towards him.
Yeah,
So
nice.
that's sort of, I think that, that's more of what I mean by forgiveness is making sure that you're not holding on to the negative emotions that you have towards this person. And what comes into place of that is like, all these new experiences and you view everything with a new light. And it's like, this is not restricted to just people who abused you. This can be somebody who
Right.
cuts you off in traffic, and all of a sudden you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to ruin my experience, my life that I have the conscious ability to decide how things are actually going on, if I'm okay or not. You can decide to just let that go and assume that that person who cut you off might be in a hurry, or maybe maybe they were abused and they haven't dealt with it, or just like pissed off about it. Like, we have no idea. So we have a lot more control over our perceptions than I think that we realize a lot of the time. So that's sort of where I'm at with the forgiveness, and in the same way that you said with Ralph, it's like, it's pretty safe to assume that this guy was acting out his own learned experiences,
Yeah.
and that he has his own inner child, just reaching out, trying to grasp some sense of safety and normalcy, if that's a word.
Yeah.
And
It was now.
yeah, exactly. So anytime you can view people with that sort of empathy, it's really helpful for you, even if you never tell them. It's not
Yeah.
like you need to say, hey, I forgive you. And that's
Yes.
sort of what I think we both mean, is that this is for us more than
Yeah.
anyone else.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. How about you?
No, that's just yeah. I was just like everything you said, and I just wanted to add to that is like I was able to forgive after I felt all the stuff that I've been harboring for them. I mean, it was like 3 hours of snot and tears and
Yeah.
weeping and just and throwing up. And I went and do it at this was possible through the work of plant medicine called ayahuasca. It's a 2-night ordeal, but on the second night is when I had this experience of just weeping and crying and seeing them in the light and seeing their darkness and seeing how the best they did and feeling and seeing little Dennis go through such a horrible, horrible experience, right? I mean, I was a wreck, and I was able to forgive because after that's gone, it's like there's a whole weight, and like you said, like new experiences open up because of that. So yeah, I wanted to add is like it's not just like, oh, okay, I forgive you. It's not just saying it. It's feeling the emotions, letting them run through the course and kind of expunge the toxins out of you.
Yeah.
And then the forgiveness comes. It's like then it becomes more than just words. It becomes a lived experience, a gnosis, so to speak. So
It's a feeling. It's a feeling
yeah,
more than words.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've certainly had my fair share of psychedelic experiences as well. I haven't done ayahuasca yet, but I am very much interested and open to it. Mushrooms have helped a lot with this stuff, and I think it's again sort of like coming back to this moment in the same way with meditation, where it's like no matter what you've been through in this moment, you are okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a wild thing to realize, especially when you've been in the headspace of how could this happen to me for your whole life. So, however you get there, plant medicine, meditation, therapy, whatever the thing is that works for you, dancing, singing,
Mhm.
stand up, like whatever, keep doing things that allow you to reprocess and feel these emotions that have been dormant in you, because that's how we're brought up to handle these things, and also our own defense mechanisms. So, the tools, we have all the tools within ourselves to heal these things, and we're pretty lucky
Yeah.
in that way. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Well, you've clearly done an immense amount of healing and have had all of these sort of releasing experiences that have gotten you and helped you get to the point where you're at now. And I just wanted to know, what advice would you give to somebody who has been through something similar, who's hoping to get to the spot where you are?
Well, you can drink a lot of ayahuasca. I'm kidding, but not really.
Kind
Yeah. Let's see. The first thing I would do is, if you have friends in your life, best friends, close friends, whether it's your mom, your dad, your friend, your girlfriend, whatever, and you haven't shared this, just share it with one person. It doesn't have to be grandiose on a podcast or on a news story spreading out through. Sometimes we don't need that, but just if you share it at least with one person that you for sure know they're there for you, they've been there for you, give them that opportunity to show up and to show you your own light, because we are all reflections of one another, and whatever strength or joy or greatness that you've seen in me and through me sharing this, I guarantee you that's in you as well. You wouldn't be able to see any positive traits unless they're inside of you. And oftentimes, going through such abuse, we just put ourselves down so much and we forget to see our own greatness, our own light. And so when you share your story on such a way, you will have the opportunity to see your own strength and your own light and your own compassion and your love, because that soul will be able to reflect that into you. So that's my first step. The second one is get some help, and see what you're comfortable with. If going to a personal therapist sounds really daunting, join a support group. That's huge, immense healing, because you get to be with other survivors and you get to see joy and laughter and strength, and your own strength will show up for their stories. Like I don't know how it works. Well, I mean, I probably do know how it works, but regardless, when you hear other survivor stories, your own maybe anger for how dare this person went through something that I hate the people that did this to them. You'll be amazed by the power and the strength and the courage that rises in you from hearing other people's stories. And then you get to share yours and you're like, oh, I shared it. Oh, the world's not falling apart, lightning is not in the sky. There aren't dragons and zombies running around in the streets. It's like, no, you get to oh, okay. And then you expand. Maybe you go to find a personal therapist and start doing the work on trusting your own word and trusting that you can feel safe in your own body again. There are so many incredible techniques like Hakomi, EMDR therapy. We mentioned psychedelics. Obviously, do your own research if you're going to be doing that. But most importantly, take it easy. Take it easy on yourself. You've already been through so much. And remember that if you choose this healing journey, just remember you've already been through the worst thing in your life. You cannot relive that, and you won't relive that. You owe it to yourself to do this healing. And I'm inviting you to join all of us, Sebastian and I, and other survivors who have been on the podcast. Join us. Come join us. We have cookies over here. We got bacon over here.
It's pretty chill over here.
There is an immense support group that you can always reach out and if you feel like you just want to reach out to, you have nobody to share your story, I'd be more than willing and happy to hold that space for you and read it. I'm here. You have a brother. You have a brother in me.
I love that, man. That's fantastic advice. And where could people email you?
Sure. It's you can email me to denisflynn101@gmail.com. So DNISFLYNN 101@gmail.com. And just even if you don't know where to start, I can give you some advice if you want it, or I can just be there, be like, hey, I've walked it. I'm still walking this path. It's a never, like, that's the final thing I wanted to say is we have to accept that we're going to be living with some of this anxiety, panic, depression, that it will come and go. As you do the healing, it won't be so intense, but this is something that I've accepted that I'm going to have to live with the rest of my life. It's not a hindrance. It's not a curse. It's something that I live through, and I get to carry it so that I can show up for those who need it, So
it's the acceptance of it that is healing, and letting go of the resistance to it.
Yes.
And feeling like I can't have this be with me forever. I can't have this be a part of me. I just want it to not have happened. As soon as you come to terms with it and allow it and accept it and accept yourself, that's when a lot of the healing takes place. So truly cannot thank you enough for coming on here today, man. Everything that you said and the way that you told your story, it was really remarkable, and just a healing conversation to be a part of and to listen to. And just, I am very, very grateful to have spoken with you and to know you. I can't wait to have you back on again soon.
Looking forward to it, brother.
Dude!
Yee!
That was brilliant, man.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Brilliant.